Hi, welcome to days 4 through 9 of the Every Bit Counts Challenge here on Open Hand Farm. I am Penny, and we are done in my larder because the first video I did this season about the Every Bit Counts Challenge was talking to you about how my larder needed to be refurbished a little bit. We needed to add extra shelving and things like that. And I told you that I would show you the work I had done in the first full week of the Every Bit Counts Challenge. So here we are. I want to let you know that we got the work done and we are now ready to stock the larder. Let me show you. These shelves were reevaluated and space was made for more items in the canning section, but we also see how this shelf comes out further than these do. We don't know why that is. So eventually we are going to build wider shelves here in these two spots so that they will hold more. But for now, this is what we have. I did add my drop cloth covers to my windows. We have the new shelf unit next to the old shelf unit. Mark made all of the risers, and I ordered paper to cover those risers because the wood is kind of rough and it's a very porous wood, so I wanted to cover them with a contact paper. Now he did go ahead and put some wood on the actual shelves. I can't lift it up and show you because he really did a good job of making these risers fit right in like a second shelf, and I love that. But I did get most of the risers covered, and then I ran out of paper. So I've got more ordered. We've also got some fairly tight bungee cords to put around the front because some people were saying, what if you had an earthquake or something and all those jars fell? So we have kind of addressed that. We had gone to an LDS Bishop store and bought some number 10 cans of some flour, sugar, and wheat. So I put those up there. They have a 20-year shelf life and then a 10-year shelf life on dried milk. So we bought some of those just to have for future needs if necessary. I went ahead and moved my onions and garlic to on top of the sweet potatoes, which are wrapped up in here. And then on these shelves, I went ahead and added and covered the new risers as well. So we have plenty of space. Well, we've got some space on these shelves. Of course, we have the new riser there that could hold a lot more, and these two shelves that are empty down here. Now, we did not yet address this riser and whether or not we could cut it off a little bit so that a jelly jar could fit in there. So I thought if we could cut this off just a little bit on the feet, we would still have room above these jars, but I could use this more efficiently. So anyway, we are ready to go. And again, I did cover the windows, so it's kind of weird when I walk in here now because it's dark. And I did put a different temporary curtain up on that door. I need to buy a curtain rod and a curtain, and I just didn't get that done this week, but that looks a lot better than what the previous owner had there. Now, before I go any further with what I preserved this week, I just want to share that it's been a tougher week than I thought it would be. So I have not gotten as many things preserved as I would like to. We have some bittersweet news. Our children that live with us, my son and his wife and their 3 children, Genesee, who is 5, Tevia, who is 2, and Zola, who is 1, have decided to move to an apartment closer to where they work and go to church, which is totally understandable. They want to be in the community that they live in. And so they are moving out, and it's been kind of a crazy week. So as you can see, they're coming back today for some more things. And so it's just been kind of a crazy time. Plus, my mom was here for a week, so I had a lot of stuff to catch up on from her being here because I didn't want to do a lot of work. I just wanted to be with her. So I had garden work to do. But I want to tell all of you that are doing this challenge, it's okay. It's okay if you have a week during the month of August, if you have 2 weeks during the month of August, whatever, that you just can't preserve as much every day as you would like to. It's not a competition. It's okay. Yes, I probably preserved more last year than I will get done this year. I have friends who are doing this challenge and I see what they're doing. I'm like, that's amazing. I am happy for them that they are able to find the time, even though I know some of them are having to find the time. And I'm trying to find the time myself in all of the changes that are going on in our home. So don't beat yourself up if you see somebody canning 16, 20, 30 quarts of something every day. It's okay. I have to remind myself also that there will only be 2 people living in this house now after a year and a half of having up to 9 people sitting at our table for meals. So I don't need to worry that much about filling every shelf I have this month. I can work on it as the year goes on. It's just fun to be able to do this challenge and see what I can accomplish even in a busy life. So don't beat yourself up. Do what you can and be proud of what you did. Let's go see what I preserved this week for the Every Bit Counts Challenge. Last week, I picked 26 pounds of my golden beets. So I cleaned them up and I put them in the fridge and I waited until this week to take care of them. Before I could do anything with them, I knew I had to get their skins off. So I put them in boiling water for about 30 seconds. Then I put them in an ice bath. And as you can see, the skins just pull right off. It's amazing. And it's so easy, so much better than peeling. So once I got them all peeled, I diced them up. I made a syrup and I heated them in the syrup, put them in my jars, put the lids on, sealed them up, and water canned them, and they were all done. Now I also dehydrated some cucumbers. My cucumbers have kind of died down, so I wanted to preserve the last of them, so I made a cucumber powder. I have a plan for this cucumber powder that we'll do another day. Today's Monday, and I am going to start out by freezing 3 quarts of raspberries that I picked from our bushes. I like to flash freeze them where I lay them out on parchment paper, and as you can tell, I use the same piece of parchment over and over again. I don't want to waste it, and I slide it in the freezer and let them freeze. Then when I take them out, I can just gather up the parchment paper, and you can see they're loose and rolling around on there because they weren't frozen in a big clump, and put them in the bag. And when I want to use them, all I have to do is measure out the amount I want, and it's all good. Be sure and label and date. I know these are raspberries, but sometimes I send people to the freezer that might not know it. Now, we planted green beans and I have gotten a lot off of them, but like I said, last week meant I did no work. And when I went out there, they're starting to look rusty. They have holes all in them, but they were full of beans. So Mark just pulled the whole plants and put them in big buckets and brought them up for me. So I am just taking each plant and pulling all the beans off. It was really easy to do. It wasn't backbreaking, that's for sure. And a friend of mine came and helped. I will be planting more for my fall garden, so that will not be the end of my green beans. I think I have made these tomatoes every time I do the Every Bit Counts challenge. I have slicers, and since I'm the only one in the house that really eats slicers, I just slice them up and dehydrate them, but I call these pizza tomatoes because that's what they smell like when they're dehydrating. I just slice them to about 1/4 of an inch, and then I brush them with olive oil, and then I sprinkle on a mixture of garlic salt, Italian seasoning, and shredded Parmesan. Erica was still here, so she was helping me, and we kind of came up with a good routine. I would slice them, she would oil them, and then whoever had an extra hand would sprinkle the seasonings on. I was able to fill 5 trays of those, and man, did they smell good. Today's Tuesday, so the first thing I need to do is take the tomatoes out of the dehydrator. I put them in 1/2-gallon jars and added an oxygen absorber, and they turned out great. I will definitely do more of these. We also needed to dig our potatoes. I know I'm not canning, freezing, drying, whatever, but I am preserving these. In our larder, we have a cellar, and we've never used it, but we're going to use it this year. We're going to put our potatoes down there to cure, and then put them in boxes and store them on shelves down there. So we are preserving potatoes today. It was so exciting, and the weather was beautiful, and we had the biggest harvest we've ever had. But you'll hear more about that in my potato harvest video coming out soon. I also have lots of kale. People keep cutting it and it keeps growing back. I love this kale. So I'm just washing it, drying it off, and then I'm gonna take a big bowl and add some ingredients to it. I'm gonna add olive oil, cloves of garlic chopped up or minced, and some thyme. I did also add some nutritional yeast. I stirred it together in the bowl with the kale, and then laid the kale on my dehydrator trays, and then I set it to go for the day. Wednesday, of course, the first thing is to pull the kale out of the dehydrator. It is so good. I will cut back on the oil. I treated this as 4 recipes, just so you know. But I would say 2 tablespoons instead of 3 tablespoons of oil, but they are delicious. I got 1 big gallon jar. We purchase a farm-raised hog every year, and I had some ham that I needed to use because we'll be getting another one in a couple of months. So I baked this small ham and just cut the outer skin off of it. And I will tell you that it is controversial whether or not you should can ham. And part of that is because of the salt drying out the meat, and the meat being thicker and maybe not able to get the heat in it. I pull out any of the fat so that it's not too fatty in there. And then when I fill my jar, I add water in it. So it's not like a raw pack, and I definitely cook the ham before I do this. So I wouldn't put a raw ham in. I just chop it up, try to keep the pieces even, and then I put it in a pot. Because it had been in the refrigerator overnight, it's cold. I also skimmed the fat off of the broth that came off of the ham while it was cooking. And I'm going to use this when I heat the ham. I will add this as well as a little bit of water so that the ham gets hot all the way through. So I am starting out with very hot packed, small pieces of ham, and then I am processing it in the pressure canner. I started doing this last year and I love it. I love having a jar of ham on hand to throw in eggs, to eat beside something, to shred up and use as sandwiches. And of course, I kept the bone to put in the freezer for ham and beans later. Okay, while my ham heats up, I want to talk to you about a pressure canner and being the owner of one. There are some responsibilities that goes along with it. Every year, you should take your canner somewhere and have the pressure tested. I take mine to the Missouri Extension office, and they have a special machine that tests the pressure. If you don't have an extension office, I'm not sure where you could go, but look and see if you have one. It usually costs like $5 or something like that for them to test it. Mine is kind of spitting a little bit of fluid out as it's cooking, so it was recommended that I put a new seal on. This is a very old seal. I've never changed it, and this was a used canner that I got from a family member. So I ordered on Amazon, what can't you get on Amazon? A new seal. So I'm going to put that on. And if you don't know what size of seal to get, dig out your book and it will tell you what kind of canner it is. If you don't have a book, mine tells me right here under the handle the model number and what it is. So I was able to look it up that way. So this actually came with 2 seals. So I'm just going to look and make sure there's no debris or chunks of anything underneath here. I'm even going to take a clean rag and wipe it off to make sure it's clean before I put my new seal on. Then I'm just going to snap it under the lid. And there it is. Now, another thing that came with the new seals are 2 new pressure plugs. For any of you new canners who worry about your canner exploding while it's canning, this will help that not happen. This is your over pressure plug, and if it gets too much pressure in here, this will pop out to help release the steam and the pressure inside. In order to change this, you just want to go in here and kind of push it towards the middle and get under it and pop it out. I'm going to add the new overpressure plug. There. Flip it over. Just going to finish popping it out. There we go. So now it's in place. Now you can also make sure that your vent is good and make sure it's tight so that it doesn't vent where it doesn't need to vent. And you can also make sure that your pressure gauge is tight. Mine moves just a little bit, so I can just tighten this up so that it stays in place. So those are just some maintenance things that you can do on your pressure canner to make sure it works properly for you throughout the years and last many years. Now let's get back to that ham. It's very hot. You can see the steam coming off of it. I'm going to fill the chunks into the jars, leaving a 1-inch headspace. Then I'm going to take that broth and pour on the meat. And I started out with just 1/4 cup each because I wanted to make sure I at least got that much in each jar, and then I would finish filling with just boiling water. But it turned out I had plenty of the liquid. I got the air bubbles out, refilled them, washed the jars with soapy water and then with vinegar. Put them in the canner and let them go. And now I'm going to start another jar of eggs. This is called water glassing. I did a jar last week and I just kind of grab each day any clean eggs that we have, but they have to be clean eggs. And we'll just keep adding as the week goes on. When the ham came out, it looked beautiful. And it is so bubbly in and around those pieces. This is Thursday, so it's ladies' coffee. I'm preparing for a baked oatmeal for them. And in the meantime, I am going to can some chicken thighs. I have always canned breast and recently canned some thigh. So I opened that jar to make sure I liked the texture and everything, and it was delicious. So I decided to buy these chicken thighs. I also needed some for a soup that I want to can tomorrow. I'm just going to put the rest of these in pint jars and have them on hand for anything that I would need them for. 2 of these jars, I'm going to add some Grill Mates mesquite seasoning. We love using this for fajitas, so I'm hoping I have 2 jars of fajita meat. I think I will freeze some grilled peppers and onions, and then I can just pull those out, open a jar, and we have fajitas. I, of course, washed the jars off with my soapy water, and then later came in with some vinegar and cleaned them again. Make sure there was no fat anywhere on that seal. That'll keep your lids sealing nicely. Now this is the jar of thighs that I had canned before, and I'm just going to go ahead and break this up and make kind of like a chicken salad for the ladies for coffee group. But I wanted you to see how tender this chicken comes out. It is so good. It just pulls right apart. I want to kind of break up those longer sections. So I'm just showing you how well it shreds up. It's so good. Because that jar of chicken had some broth in it and I didn't need it, I just decided to pour it in with my chicken broth that I'm cooking. And then while the chicken was canning, I picked up some of my tomatoes. These are a peach tomato, and I have to tell you, I am disappointed. They're supposed to have a little bit of a peach taste to it. I do not taste it, but they're a good tomato. I went ahead and cut them across the center, took the seeds out, put a little bit of olive oil, and then some salt, as well as some pepper. And I'm going to grill these and make some roasted tomatoes. Now, I have to say, in hindsight, these were not the greatest tomato to do this with. They really just mushed down to next to nothing. Even though I took all the seeds out, they were still very wet, but they will be great. They'll have the flavor and I can use them and it's not a big deal. I just took them out and put them on the grill until they had a little bit of color to them. And I just flipped them over a little bit, more or less just to get rid of the juices that were in there. But you can see they're so soft as they cook down and before they even really get much color on them. So I just transferred them to a big bowl when I thought they were ready and took them inside. And I did not cut out the middles because I didn't want to waste any tomato. Well, they pop out very easily when they're cooked like this. And then I just took a knife and kind of gave them a coarse chopping. My family doesn't like a big chunk of tomato, so this helped with that. I did add lemon juice to each jar to make it acidic enough to use the water bath canner. Then I went over to the chicken stock and strained it out and went ahead and filled the jars. I knew I wasn't going to have quarts and quarts of this, but anything that I can put on the shelf will help. These were leftover chicken carcasses from our Monday night community dinner, and I didn't want them to go to waste. When you are canning jars that are different sizes, you have to can all of them according to the bigger jar's time. So even though I have a pint in here, you need to process it for the quart time. And we added to the egg jar. We now have 19 instead of 15. Here are all the cans that we canned today. I did have one chicken jar that did not seal. You hear that? Do not put that on your shelf. Put it in your refrigerator and use it up. I have a friend that loves zucchini jam, and I told her that she could help me and we would make some together. I was kind of in the freezer getting something else out and saw all of this zucchini, and I thought, okay, now's the time. So I called Letitia and said, let's make jam, and she was in for it. So before she came that morning, I put the thawed zucchini into cheesecloth and I squeezed it all dry. Now I have to tell you, this kind of came back to bite us later, because normally the zucchini would add some moisture as it cooked out into the jam mixture. So we just added a little bit of water to make it work better. So after I was done squeezing it, I just left it sitting in a colander in a bowl. Now I have done a full video on this jam and it is delicious. Anybody that has tasted it loves it. So this is what it looks like before we added the water. See how there's not much liquid there? And I also use Pomona's pectin because I use honey instead of sugar. So Letitia kept it stirring for me. It was so nice to have a couple extra hands so that I could get jars ready while she was stirring. And we got 11 jars, almost a dozen. I had been trying to make this Aztec soup all week, and I finally was able to do it. The recipe calls for tomatillos, and I did not have tomatillos, but a friend of mine did, and so we traded peppers for tomatillos, and then I decided I wanted to do a double batch, so I went ahead and just did a couple green tomatoes to stretch the tomatillos. And I charred all of them. I wanted a really good smoky taste. These are poblanos and jalapenos out of my garden, and a very ripe jalapeno, which is very hot. So I only put one of those in. But I cooked them until everything was very soft. And then I took it in the house and put it in my blender, and I just blended it because I knew that we did not want chunks of this stuff. I left it a little bit chunky, but not big chunks. Then we went in and put onions and garlic in some olive oil along with some cumin. And then we added corn and chopped up chicken thighs. It smelled so good. This is what it looked like when it came out of the canner. So here's our eggs that we added as well, and our zucchini jam for the end of the week. Thanks so much for coming along, and thank you for all of you who are watching my videos, and I love the comments. I love getting to know you. I love seeing what you're doing through the challenge and how your pantry is growing as well. If you are new here this week, please consider subscribing. I do several videos on all different topics that relate to things on a homestead or farm. So maybe there are some other videos that I have that you would enjoy as well. And just remember not to push yourself, not to judge yourself against other people, and invite your friends over and make it a fun time. Don't make it a drudgery and a hard work. Enjoy it. And until next time, blessings on you and yours.